Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and if I sound a little bit off today, that's because I'm a little bit under the weather. I do apologize, but my mission always remains the same. I will deliver you daily gaming news, so, the show must go on, and we do have a pretty big and surprising story today. The second biggest game acquisition ever was just announced, and this could result in some fairly notable layoffs according to one piece of information, and maybe even some studio closures as well. So do stick around, and we're going to talk all about that, as well as Xbox and how they're preparing for their cross-platform future. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with what I feel like is a really, really cool announcement. Wario64 posted this on Twitter yesterday, brought a lot of attention to this, and just check this out. This is Parasite Mutant, a game that's heavily inspired by the 90s cult classic, Parasite Eve. To this day, that game is still regarded as one of Square Enix's really best games ever made, but for whatever reason, Square just doesn't seem to want to do much with this series, and even when they have, they've made some changes that haven't exactly been as well regarded as the original 1997 title. To be fair, Parasite Eve 2 is still a heavily praised game, but we can't really say the same thing for the PSP entry, The Third Birthday. So it really just kind of seems like this studio just said, well, you know what, fine, I'll do it myself. So they took the real-time combat system from the original and just the horror elements that it was so popular for, and they just ran with it. Now, it does have an anime-esque art style to it, but honestly, I like it. I think it's very fitting for what it's trying to emulate. Now, to be fair, though, spiritual successors don't always live up to the hype, but if anything else, Parasite Mutant definitely has my attention. It certainly seems to have the potential, and now it's just up to its execution. Unfortunately, though, we don't yet have a release window, but the good news here is that it does have a page up on Steam where you can currently wishlist it if you are indeed interested. I wishlisted it immediately. Now, we also got a new console leak that blew up online over the weekend, and there's very good reason for that. This is for a new DS-style Anbernic handheld, and the thing about Anbernic is that they are, I'd say, very good at offering emulation-based consoles for a fair price, all while still offering respectable quality. I actually have their Game Boy Advance design console myself, and I think it's pretty good for what it tries to do, and that's the thing about Anbernic. They seem to release a new device every few months, and the reason for that is because they've been trying to target every possible niche that they can. If you want a Game Boy Color type of console, they got it. If you want a Sega-based console, they got it. If you want a Game Boy Advanced SP, they got that as well. And of course, as I just mentioned, their GBA-style console as well. So a DS type of device really is that next step for them, and gamers are already very excited about this leak because there is potential that this could come in at under $100 like a lot of their other devices. And the reason there's so much excitement is because DS emulation is still difficult for a lot of devices even in the year of 2025. And that's not because the games themselves are hard to run, but rather it's because DS titles just don't really feel right on a single screen. So all of these years later, the DS and really the 3DS are probably still the best way to play those games. But something very interesting has been happening these past 12 months because various console emulation companies have started to come out with their own DS type of device, most notable being Ioneo and the AYN Thor. However, they do target higher price tags, whereas this new Anbernic console will likely be much more affordable. Now, to be completely fair, the other two devices that I just mentioned will handle 3DS games probably very well, whereas the Anbernic likely won't. This is going to be more for retro-based consoles, whether that be DS, Game Boy Advance, PlayStation 1, and so on and so forth. So that is something to consider, but if you just want DS games and you're not worried about 3DS, I'd say as long as this leak proves to be true, then this will be a very nice option to have. Oh, and we also got another update for the physical version of Oblivion Remastered. I know a lot of people have been hopeful for a physical release, and It's now 100% confirmed. They dropped its pre-orders on Amazon, and surprisingly, it's going for just $40. Now, that's extremely notable here because the digital version, I believe that goes for $60. Now, maybe they'll drop the digital version's price as well, but this is really a nice incentive for anybody who held off from its shadow launch just earlier this year. The one thing about the physical version, though, is that there's been a lot of skepticism about whether or not the data is actually on the disc, or if it's instead, a key card, if you will. Well, at least according to the retail box itself, it does claim to have the physical base game included. So unless that's a play on words, which, you never know, but it does appear to be on disc, though maybe not the extra DLC, or at least that's how I currently read it. That will instead be a code. However, I'd say if you're still skeptical, which honestly I can't blame you considering Xbox hasn't exactly been great with their recent physical releases, so maybe wait for it to launch on October 14th, and then, a Twitter account like Does It Play will likely come out and confirm what is and what isn't on the disc. All right, so let's go and get into the big acquisition, and this came as some surprise. I know I certainly wasn't expecting this. This is really what I woke up to this morning, but EA, shockingly, has now been acquired by multiple different groups. Yeah, EA somehow wound up getting acquired before the likes of Ubisoft. It's kind of crazy to say that considering their entire situation, but here we are. And I'll just go ahead and read the report here. It says, EA, a global leader in interactive entertainment, today announced that it has entered into a definitive agreement to be acquired by an investor consortium comprised of PIF, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners in an all-cash transaction that values EA at an enterprise value of approximately $55 billion. The transaction positions EA to accelerate innovation and growth to build the future of entertainment. Now, for anybody that's unaware of who these companies are, PIF apparently is a sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has been very active with game acquisitions these past few years. They previously acquired SNK, but really, this is just on a whole different level than that. This is quite literally the second biggest game-based acquisition ever, only behind Activision Blizzard, which of course cost north of $70 billion. Now, Silver Lake, they are a global private equity firm that specializes in technology-based acquisitions. And then lastly, Affinity Partners is an investment firm founded and led by Jared Kushner, a businessman based in the United States. Here's the kicker with all this, though, because apparently they leveraged this acquisition with $20 billion of debt, which has been pointed out will likely result in steep cuts and layoffs within EA. So really, any studio that hasn't produced at a high and successful level could be under a microscope post-acquisition, and I think now more than ever, we kind of understand that. After Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard, they laid off a lot of people, not just within Activision Blizzard, but also from some of their other studios as well. Now, a lot of the layoffs was from redundancy, but there were some surprising cuts like Tango Gameworks, Arcane Austin, and they even freed up Toys for Bob. Now, to be fair, Toys for Bob partnered up with them afterwards, but it has become clear that Microsoft is running Xbox and the Activision Blizzard studios a little bit more tightly post-acquisition. They want a return on investment, and these companies right now that are acquiring EA, they're going to want a return on investment as well. So we could see similar results from EA. I think the big moneymakers like Battlefield Studios, Respawn Entertainment, which works on Apex Legends, and their EA Sports division will likely be safe. But for studios like BioWare, on the other hand, which has really struggled for a long time, they might be under a microscope a bit more, just considering how much money is involved here. I would think they would at least wait for the release of Mass Effect 4 before making any kind of rash decision. But, we'll see how all this plays out, because this is certainly a massive story that will unfold slowly over time. So make sure to subscribe, and I'll keep you up to date as we learn more. All right, now one last thing before we go, though, because another game, really one of the most successful games from this generation, just got announced for Xbox Play Anywhere, being Hogwarts Legacy. And in my opinion, this is one of the most consumer-friendly programs within the game industry. Now, if you're unaware of what Xbox Play Anywhere is, basically it means that you can buy a digital key on Xbox through their consoles or on Windows, and you'll then own a copy on both platforms. And the thing is that they've been quietly building this program up in the background. Even at the Tokyo Game Show just last week, they announced multiple Xbox Play Anywhere games, including Romancing Saga 2, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD, as well as various others. And I think it's fairly clear why they're increasing their priority for it. And that's because PC is a big part of Xbox's future. Not only for their next console, which is, rumored to have a heavy Windows slant to it, but also for something like the Xbox Ally. I mean, there's been a lot of discourse online about whether or not it's actually an Xbox console, because technically it can't play your entire Xbox library, which that's completely true. But the Xbox Play Anywhere program does alleviate that complaint, or at least to some degree. I mean, Xbox still has to get third-party companies to support it, but they've been finding success here recently, whether that be with Warner Brothers and Hogwarts Legacy, or with Final Fantasy VII Remake and Square Enix. So even though I do prefer physical games, that's where I'm going to buy my games every time if I can, but for anybody who prefers digital, this is definitely a program to pay attention to, because I think there's a potential chance that it could be critical for their next generation plan, whether that be for their next console or even for one of their handhelds like we're currently seeing from the Xbox Ally. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.